My background is with regards to hydraulics and water resources. However, I would be able to give a glimpse of what I understand from different disciplines, how you can actually relate your core studies right now with the industry. I have been with a company called Jacobs in States after I completed my master's over there. So I was there for about 5 years, got my license for professional engineer from Texas. And then I moved over here in Jacobs and then moved to Mott MacDonald over here to manage their hydraulic modeling team and hydraulics team for global delivery services. Global delivery services essentially services the projects around the world for Mott MacDonald, which relate to the hydraulic type of work. So with that, let me just quickly cover the uh, disclaimer that all the information which is covered during this presentation is publicly available via Google search, which I have collected on 24th of September, and there is no particular information that is used or data that is used from my employer, present or past. I'm presenting these slides in my personal capacity, and what I'm explaining it or what I'm putting forward my views, they are my own, and I'm not representing my employers, present or previous. This presentation does not include any technical consultancy aspects. It is mainly to provide you career advice and provide you advice for your professional development essentially. So it's not technical consultancy uh, details within that. And as you will see in the later part of the presentation, that the background, the atmosphere, the courses, the curriculum that you have in IIT Bombay, that is very rich for you to be enabled for the industry. So there's a lot of good things that's going on that are um, making sure that you are ready to join the civil core industry. And that's something that I will cover later part of the presentation. The outline will be, I'll be giving a brief background of what civil core is. Much of it is something that you already study in the courses, but what I would go one step further is to relate those courses, is relate those content which you study in courses, which can sometimes feel a bit odd or outdated or theoretical, and you might think that how that's related to the core industry when you are going out in a consultancy environment, how would that theory make sense? So I'll be covering that aspect when I'm covering the civil core. I'll be touching upon what the industry expects from us, both you and me. Um, while I covered these 2 points, you would get a sense of where we are headed as an industry in this century, and what are the fields, what are the aspects which are there, which are emerging, which are there, which would help people, various stakeholders. I would be touching upon a little bit about my journey when I was studying in my bachelor's and when I did my master's and in industry. And then my 2 cents in terms of what I say, what I think that you guys should focus on or what's important. And then we'll discuss any questions that you might have. So, civil core. Over my 8 or 10 years of experience in industry, I have started to appreciate how the vision of a company, how a vision of a university, vision of a department, vision of a particular individual also, how that reflects in the actions, how that reflects in the specialization, how that reflects in the day-to-day activities of that particular entity. the vision that we have for IIT Bombay Civil Engineering Department is to be the fountainhead of new ideas and innovation. Now, new ideas and innovation, both the things are key to civil engineering because in this century, there's a lot that's changing in terms of climate, in terms of technology, in terms of expectations of people, in terms of politics, in terms of geopolitical aspect of development and infrastructure. So new ideas and innovations are going to be at the core of where the industry is headed or will be headed in future. So this vision is quite relevant to what we will discuss later on in the presentation. Ideas and innovation are then reflected in your specializations as well. The specializations that you have in IIT Bombay, around which the coursework is uh, uh, structured upon, and there are some master's courses that are structured upon, is with regards to transportation, geotechnical, water resources, structural, ocean, remote sensing, construction engineering, and management. All of these are part and parcel of what the industry does on a day-to-day basis, as we'll see later in the presentation. So with that background of where the heart is of the department, what these positions are, uh, all of that is reflected in the ranks that your department has right now, which is reflective of the point that you guys are getting one of the most advanced civil engineering education in the country and probably arguably in the world as well. So this is where you need to leverage the education that you are getting, the coursework that you are doing, the laboratory work that you are doing, how you can leverage it to be industry ready, to use it for your advantage. And that is where all of those aspirations that we have seen in the previous slide, how those specializations relate to the research and training and industry. Some of this is outlined in the brochure, which I picked up this information from. However, it's quite important to understand so that you know what you need to do to be industry ready. You can't be industry ready in one day. It's a 4 year or 5 year or 2 year curriculum that you are going through, and you need to understand what you need to do on a day-to-day basis so that you are ready for any of the opportunity that you will get after 4 years or 3.5 years when you are sitting in the placement. You might be going into any of the core industries like which are listed over here. You might be getting into a business consultancy job. You might be getting into a software development job. You might start your own venture. However, all of that starts with the focus on doing your coursework and laboratory work in a way that you understand the big picture. So I'll spend some 2 or 3 minutes on this slide to explain you the big picture. Uh, when you enter into a job, either it's in core or non-core job, what IIT Bombay trains us is to is to enhance and use our analytical ability. Right from the first class of MA 101 to the last class of your curriculum, which is sometimes thesis or one of the specialized courses. All of that, the the heart of that is to build our analytical approach. We can learn the courses on mathematics, science, various civil engineering courses, but if we don't understand the analytical aspect of that, if we don't understand the reasoning that's inherent in those coursework, we won't be able to be industry ready. And to understand those aspects, we have to focus on relating our theory with the practicals. Now, if somebody asks me today, what's the most important thing in hydraulics, I would say one of the most important things that I consider in hydraulics is to understand the discretization, is to understand the finite volume method, finite difference method, and finite element method. Now, when I was doing a class in my fourth year, with regards to finite volume, finite difference methods, I think it was taken by 2 or 3 professors. Uh, from water resources specialization, and it was completely theoretical class. I mean, uh, I reflect on that, and I think that whatever I studied in that class, the softwares, the tools, the technology that we are using in industry right now, all of that is built upon that theory. If we talk about the structural class that we study, I mean, I don't know if Dr. Bajoria is still there, but if you take the classes, you might not be able to relate to what use you would have of that information um, in industry. But believe it or not, all the tools that we use in industry are based on understanding and using that theory to analyze the results, to make sure that we are understanding the inputs correctly, outputs correctly, and using our engineering judgment on the basis of that theory and the software to build resilient solutions in our core industry. So all of these laboratories that we are part of in IIT Bombay, they are quite important with regards to our understanding of what sort of concept we would use in industry. The geotechnical laboratories that we have, they are state of the art in terms of analyzing the forces, in terms of understanding the fractures, etc., that we use in almost all of our projects. The ocean engineering lab that we see over here, that's something that comes in very handy when you want to understand various equations. So I can go on and on this, but the bottom line is focus on how you can relate what you are studying in the class with what you are applying in front of a computer using a software to what you are understanding in laboratories, because this is the chance for you to grasp everything, and that is what will keep you distinguished compared to your peers in an industry environment. It's this basic that I mean, if I need to sum up my presentation right now, I could just sum up that okay, this is the end of the presentation. With this approach, with this mindset, with this vision in mind of focusing on ideas and innovation using the theoretical and practical aspects, that's it. That's the core, and that's the non-core as well if you understand the analytical abilities that you are developing. So I do want to ask if anybody has any questions at this point before I move further, because from there on I won't be talking much about IIT Bombay. So if somebody has any question of any class that they don't want to understand, if they are able to relate to it or not, or if they are thinking some laboratory work is too outdated, if they're thinking that they don't understand what a particular professor is teaching, you guys can unmute and speak up. Otherwise, let's move on to the next slide, which shows some of the industry work that some of your professors are already doing, and some of the research scholars and students are doing. You see over here the geotechnical design that's for the airport that is being done, that was done in IIT Bombay. The structure analysis part of Bandra Worli Sea Link was done in IIT Bombay. The IIT Bombay was associated with that, the department. There are various other things that I know that the professors are doing are quite important. Professor Gupta, he is and he was involved in understanding the drainage problems that Mumbai faces, and his contribution has been quite significant, and also other professors, Professor Professor Jyoti Prakash, Professor Ghosh, all of them with whom I studied at that time, they they are contributing immensely with regards to the advancement and supporting the industry projects. I remember that when I was doing my seminar in my third year, I did it on rainwater harvesting in IIT Bombay campus. Professor Jyoti Prakash and I, we actually walked through the campus, so where we can actually propose some solutions, structural or non-structural solutions, to have more water accumulated and percolated within the ground so that it raises the groundwater table. It actually provides a better use of the runoff, which happens quite rapidly when rain occurs. So this is the time for you guys to get involved, participate in the core and non-core activities, and build up your your critical thinking, your analytical abilities, your network, because that is what is going to help you in the industry. Now, I am going to take one example, which is very interesting because it covers all the different specialization and aspect that you study in your 4 or 5 or 2 year of curriculum. It's very exciting project, but this is just one project out of n number of projects that occur in civil engineering. It's one flagship project which shows the importance of the theory, the practical, how you can actually relate different inspiration, and how you can be industry ready, particularly core industry. This is a project in Bahrain. So let's look at where Bahrain is, and I'll be using this project to actually explain you some of the aspects later on in the presentation, where I actually cover my advice, where I actually cover uh, the uh, the journey that I took, emergence of new fields, the civil industry. So we'll be spending some good 10-15 minutes on this particular project. So we are here in Mumbai. This project is located in Bahrain. If you look at the site location in Bahrain, it is on the northern side of Bahrain. This is Bahrain, just between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Very small country. Let's zoom in over there. This is Bahrain. Uh, the project that we are seeing is um, so this is the northern part of Bahrain that we'll see, and this is the project site, which was taken in 2016. This is the project site in 2016 that you are seeing here. Observe this particular shape over here. In 1984, this particular shape, that is this particular shape, didn't have anything over here. This land has come up between now and 1984. There was sea, and there is sea in this area, um, but within the span of from 1984 to now, this is the change that we see over here. We'll go into detail on that. Um, but if we compare the two pictures, this was 1984, this is 2016. This is the additional part that has come up. We'll talk about how that has come up and what are the different interesting things about this project. You see some other parts also came up over here. There was nothing over here, and now um, in a span of 30 years or so, we have this particular part of land. There was nothing over here. We have this right now. There was nothing on this side. It was straight up. Now we have all of these land areas that have come up. This marina has come up. There was nothing over here. If you see over here, there is this marina over here. There was nothing over here. On this side as well, the development has come up over here. So it is where you actually relate to the exciting opportunities that you get in core industry. So um, with this comparison, if you see the scale from here to here, so from here to here, we are looking at about 25 kilometer of length. So from here to here, it's about 25 kilometer. Now this is about 3 kilometer by 4 kilometer. So this particular part of land that you are seeing, which is what we will be looking at, is 3 kilometer by 4 kilometer. It's about 12 kilometer square, um, which is about 3,000 acres of area. Now, can anybody guess in next 10 seconds what's the area of our IIT Bombay campus? All right. So can anybody type in the comment? Exactly. So the area of IIT Bombay campus is around 550 acres, and this area is about 5 times of IIT Bombay campus. What you see in the entire campus, they have built 5 times of that campus land. They reclaimed it from sea. These are some 7 islands or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are 7 islands that you see over here that have just come up. This is the sort of project that we deal with, where we actually come into industry. But then how that project is coming up, what are different parts of the project, that's what we'll understand. So as we talked about, that there is nothing over here. uh, in uh, in 2005 there was nothing. So we saw that what we have in 2005, there was nothing over here. This is the part. In 2007, in a 2 years time, they have started to reclaim some of the land over here, and in another 2 years they have reclaimed all of this land over here up to this point. If you see another 1 year, they have started to reclaim this part, started to fill up more part, grade this part. Now, to do all of this civil engineering reclamation or construction, they need to focus on analyzing the marine structures, analyzing the coastal dynamics, analyzing the waves, analyzing the impact of climate change, all of the fields that we have seen over here in our specialization. So if we see the different fields that we have seen over here, we have touched upon ocean engineering and various aspects. We would be looking at all of these different fields as we go through this project. So um, when we construct this, we cover geotechnical aspect, marine, coastal hydrodynamics, coastal hydraulics, waves, climate change, etc. When we reclaim this part of the land, it also includes not just geotechnical aspect, but the structural aspect as well. It also includes the transportation aspects. It also includes the aspect of architectural uh, design and the layout, how you are going to plan out the development. It also includes the construction sequencing, how you would actually fill up these different areas, how you plan out the different parts of islands, the construction, the feel of the material, what sort of different material you will bring, from where will you bring, what's the uh, characteristics of that material. And it also includes the project management part, because you when you need to do this fill, you have to put out the tender, you have to estimate the cost of this work, then in the industry you have to bid for this work, you have to win this work, and then you have to plan out uh, the project commissioning and how you would actually list out different things, how you will coordinate with any subcontractors. It covers a lot of different aspects of industries, which you'll eventually learn when you are part of the industry. But what's important is for you to understand the technical aspect and the different theories behind it. uh, if you have a chance, you can actually learn different softwares on coastal dynamics that your marine engineering department has, such as Mike 21, through which you can actually understand the wave hydrodynamics. You have the geotechnical laboratory and the geotechnical coursework, and also some of the geotechnical softwares through which you can analyze the geotechnical aspect of this field. So this fun project helps us understand what we need to do in our coursework, in our labs, in interacting with our professors, and going the extra mile to take up some extra projects to be core industry ready. If you see over here, we have seen this one. Next aspect that we see is how they have started to fill up this area, but then this area eroded in between, which shows one very important aspect of civil engineering that we learn in industry, that there can be mistakes, there can be errors in our design. uh, what's important is to take corrective actions, fall back to the theory and the practical aspects and the software results, and discuss with the peers and the technical experts to understand how we can mitigate some of the challenges that we face in our civil engineering design when we start to construct it or implement it on site. Because we are dealing with nature. In civil engineering, it's not like computer science where you actually build the code, you know what sort of challenges you might face. I mean, the worst that can happen is some malware might come in, or somebody could hack your system. But when you are constructing something, when you are in the civil industry, you deal with nature. It's completely unpredictable. You might think of a factor of safety in your design, but it might not be sufficient. You might see some extreme events, you might see some challenges. There might come in an earthquake which could just derail all of your entire construction, all of your planning. So that's why I'll cover later on what's important in civil engineering industry, but this is just a simple example of if we are filling this area and it's not filling properly, how we need to use our analytical ability, how we need to use our network, how we need to utilize the advice of experts to mitigate it and to bring it back on track in terms of planning and construction and timelines. So moving on, if you see over here, the plot is built, they have mitigated this particular challenge that they had, and then, I mean, just by seeing the pictures, the challenge that we're facing, they mitigated that in about 6 years time. In 2015, they have this parcel of land ready. They cover the geotechnical aspect, marine aspect, structural aspects, planning aspect, architectural aspects. Now they would likely be moving towards the construction of the buildings over here, the structural design aspect, the project management aspect, the construction sequencing, and marketing. When you do all of this project, the purpose is to sell it so that you can earn money for your particular employer or the client. So we'll look at some of those aspects as we continue on this presentation. This is 2016. You start to see some buildings which were not here, some roads. So you see some buildings that's coming in, some roads that are built in. There's a bridge which is constructed. There's a pier over here. There's a bridge which is constructed over here. There's another bridge here. There's another bridge here. Um, and this is where the construction continues, and this is just in 2 years time. So if you see the sequencing, how project progress in just 2 years time, from here to here, they have built all of these parcels, they have done some development over here, they have built some more bridges over here, they have put in this main over here, they have constructed this extra part of land which was not here, they have constructed this over here, and what I understand is that they might actually start to construct these bridges as well. They have to think of all the challenges of future. If something happens on this road, what's the access route? All of these people, how will they get out of here if this road is blocked? So they have to have secondary and tertiary connections over here for these people to get out if there's an emergency. The same is applicable over here. There has to be one more bridge so that there are at least two connections between any land connected area and island, so that we are connected. All of these things are of course, they come in through experience, but they are also part of our analytical and critical thinking. So if we go back on the subjects, we have covered transportation systems, we have covered the design of bridges, we have covered the pavements, we have covered how they would actually make it resilient for any waves or coastal impact. We have talked about geotechnical, it's quite important. Water resources is again a crucial part, because to do all this development, you have to carry the water for a particular storm event, you have to account for climate change impact on any variation in the rainfall, you have to design your wet utilities, your drainage in such a way that uh, it is able to manage any increase in rainfall due to climate change. It should also be resilient from the point of coastal dynamics and any wave or offshore aspects. It should be resilient enough so that the structure is has a good life, and it's also earthquake resilient because of the place where it is. Remote sensing is quite important. You need to be very clear, and you need to use the latest technology to know where you need to fill, how much you need to fill, and then the planning aspect comes in with regards to construction technology and management. And there is much more than all of this separately. It's integrated together. A very important thing, industry, all of these things are integrated together. And so you have to be good at understanding all the aspects. You might not be an expert of all, but you need to have an understanding of all to do good in industry and to progress in industry. So that's the topic of our today's discussion with regards to civil code. And this one project covers it all over here. Now, moving on, we have seen the top view, we have seen the buildings coming up. Again, if you see it on site, how does this look like? So this is the Al Muharraq development. This is a video that I accessed through Google. So if you see all of these aspects, so this is the end result. This is how it will be developing. So you see this particular road, this is second road, and this is third road. That means there are three links to the mainland for this particular set of islands. There are 7 islands. There was a lot of planning that went on with regards to how different parts will be constructed, how different parts will be sold, how the drainage would work, how the structural part would work, how the planning will work, how this commercial district that you see with high-rise buildings, how that would be developed, how that would be sold out to different commercial entities, how they will be accessing. So every single land would be accessible through at least 2 routes. Uh, there are marine aspects over here, there are different marinas over here. So this is how the project would look like. So this is the layout of the project. Then the planning comes in, that which part you will construct first. All of this is covered in your coursework, construction management coursework, your structural analysis coursework, how these different parts are constructed, how you put in the drainage within the road, what are the type of pavements, what are the different levels, what are the subcontracting aspects, how you will involve different vendors, how you will have a proper supply of water for construction, how you will manage the raw waste from here so that you are minimizing the wastage and you are making sure that you are not having a very high carbon footprint of your construction, will minimize the carbon footprint. And then at the end, what you need to ensure that whatever you are building for all of these different houses, everything should look the same. Everything should line up the same way. And so it is about telling these guys what to do on a day-to-day basis. To going back 10 years in 2008, when this land was being, I mean, this sea was being filled in. So this is the exciting exposure that we get in civil core industry. There are some of the advice, and there are some other aspects, and some new emerging technologies which actually help us in getting all of this right and to understand this in a better way, which I'll cover in subsequent slides. But this is what excites me, and that is why I was attracted towards civil core industry. But more on that when I cover my journey. So you see how that's been constructed. They're putting the drainage pipeline over here. They are probably having some in situ construction, putting the bricks over here. They can't get all this material from outside. They have to develop some material inside, and this is how it's looking in February 2018. That's where we actually took the snapshot, and that's just one part of the development that we saw in the top view that is developed. All of the other parts of the islands or different other islands, they are still empty. And you can see the sheer amount of civil engineering that you can see here. Continuing from that, that's how it will look at in the end. So before I move on to some other aspects, does anybody have any questions with regards to what we have seen in the project?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, as you said, it started in 1984 and in like still not completed in 2016.
No.
So,
So I showed you this is 2005. In 2005, there was nothing. This is the Google Earth snapshot from 2005, where you see that there is nothing constructed over here. In 2007, they have started to construct this part. Now, this sort of project, they have a span of about 15 years. First 3 or 4 years, you would plan out everything. You would have your architectural design. You would assess if this project is beneficial or not. Somebody is going to put money into it, right? They would
yeah.
only put money into it once they understand if it's going to benefit them. There will be a cost benefit analysis. They'll be seeing how they can actually sell all of these different parcels and how much money they will make, how much is the construction cost, how soon the project will be developed. The time is money for them. So all of this goes on in first 2 or 3 or 4 years of any project, for any project, and then only you get a go ahead of the project to start to build some things, which started in 2007. So from 2007 to 2017, 18, the snapshot that we saw, this is from 2018. Um, so it's in about 11 years time that all of that happened.
Yeah, so like still 11
Mhm,
years. So
mhm,
basically, one thing is that like or if one engineer is working on it, like from
mhm,
2007 onwards, so
mhm,
it is like quite a long period of time. So like,
mhm.
isn't doesn't that make it boring? Like, I would be really bored if I'm working on the same thing for like 11 or 10 years.
Exactly. So that's where the important aspect of civil engineering is why do we have less salary in civil engineering when we start, right? This is something that comes up, that question comes up in anybody's mind. In civil engineering, our salary depends on what type of expert we are, what's the knowledge that we have, how we are able to help the project meet the goals, meet client expectations. People who are doing the geotechnical engineering aspect, they would be involved on this project for about 3 to 4 years in the beginning. people who are doing the structural design on this, they would be involved on this project for about 5 to 7 years, or 3 to 4 years to size everything on the structural side. Now, this particular phase might be done by a structural engineer who's associated with this project for 2 years. This particular another phase might be done by somebody else. However, the project management or the project manager or project principal who are associated with this particular project for 10 years or 11 years, they get paid more than almost anybody else. So it's a point of incentive as well. You would be involved in the project for 10 years if you are getting the rewards for that. If you are learning, if you just join this particular project as a management trainee or engineering trainee, you might not be involved for 10 years. You might just be involved for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year or so, depending on what type of part you are doing in this particular project. However, if you are leading this project, then if you're involved for 10 years, the incentive would be likewise, you'd be earning quite more. Did I answer your question? So as a new entrant, or as a 2 year or 4 year, 5 year experienced person in civil core industry, you would not be involved in this project for 10 years because your specialization would restrict the involvement. You might know just one part of the specialization, which might actually get you involved in this project for 1, 2, or 3 years, and then you would be involved in other projects depending on how you're contributing to this project. However, uh, uh, if you are a 15 or 20 experienced person in the industry, ready to lead a project, coordinate with different disciplines, then only will be involved for 10 or 11 years. And that is where the resilience comes in, that when you get into the core industry, your salary is not that much. However, when you gain experience, start to become expert in one thing or couple of things, then your salary increases drastically. Why? Because your contribution is crucial for a project, so the rewards are uh, also multiplied. And that's why in a civil core industry, we should not look at the initial salary. In the civil core industry, we should look at where we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years time. When I was doing my seminar in my third year, I knew that I want to be part of water resources. I want to be part of this civil industry. Then I thought that where I want to be. I also had the same sort of challenges, that if I am just joining the industry after my bachelor's, what are my capabilities? How long would I be able to survive in the industry? Who are my peers? What are their education? What is their experience? What are the work that they are doing? If I'm in your situation and somebody tells me to plan out the cut and fill material for this, plan out the geotechnical aspect for this, design the building, design this commercial area, uh, tell me that all of this would not be affected by the waves or coastal impacts. Tell me that the drainage would be okay even if there's any change in the atmosphere. I mean, if there is any climate change, if it rains pretty heavily, I won't be able to do it because I don't have the expertise. Therefore, if you want to be in civil core industry, you can get exposure to such projects, but you need to go into gaining some advanced degrees, at least a master's. Then only you would start to become uh, the expert, and then only you will start to have the salaries that some of the people in one course get. So it's not about 10 years, 11 years. It is about what you bring on the table, and that's how your duration of involvement on this project will be defined and your rewards will be defined. Um, Now I'm not able to see the name, but HM. So is it clear, or do I need to add a bit more?
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Any other questions? Right. You guys can ask more in the end as well. Let's move on to the next one, which is civil core industry. So as I was just explaining to, what's your first name, HM?
Yeah, my name is Harsh.
Harsh. Okay. So Harsh, as I was explaining that the importance of your capabilities, or how you're involved, it depends on what you bring on the table, and that depends on how focused you are on professional development, on your technical excellence. This is quite crucial in civil core industry. We need to continue to add knowledge to what we know. We need to continue to understand the new technologies. We need to continue to understand how all the different disciplines are integrated. We need to continue to understand the theories and softwares that we studied in the college, in our bachelor's or master's. We are refreshing them. That's the professional development. How we do it in industry is through one of the professional development bodies like ASC, uh, EWRI, or there are other bodies as well. In India as well, there are some local bodies. The point is, you need to get involved in those professional bodies with a focus on continue to continue to enhance your technical knowledge, continue to develop yourself professionally. If you do this, then only you will be able to become an expert. Then only you will be able to meet your expectations that you have right now, that how you want to earn the same amount of money or more money than a particular person who's in non-core job. So second one is the digital innovation. The theoretical aspects and practical work that we do in IIT Bombay right now, some of that involves new technologies, some of that involves remote sensing, some of that involves analyzing big data, some of that involves analyzing the data that we collect from sensors. There is a, a reduced gap between how we relate electrical engineering to electronics to civil engineering to have innovative solutions for civil industry. All of that need to come from us. If we think outside the box, relate all of that, bring that onto the table, bring that to the project, add value to the project, then only we would be able to show ourselves as a standout person in civil core field. Then only we will be able to one of the leading person in civil core fields. It's not about degrees which will make it, it's about attitude that will make us successful in civil core industry, which is to think outside the box, how we can add value, how we can use various technologies, how we can customize it for our civil core industry, so that the development that we are doing, the solution that we are offering to the client is sustainable, it's suitable, and it's in sync the with the uh, with the environment, because that's where we are headed. We are headed where we need to focus on how we can reduce our carbon footprint, how we can focus on our United Nations goals of reducing the carbon use and carbon footprint, and how we can have solutions which are in sync with environment, how we can do all of that where we are actually collaborating with different disciplines and adding value to the project. The client in the civil industries, they have a margin of 10% to 15% or 20% for a project, or at max 25%. If we use these technologies, if we use innovation and collaboration to add value for even 5% or 10%, you are doing a massive amount of value addition for the client, which would help you shine in the project, which would help you grow in the industry. However, while you do all of that, you need to focus that you are following ethical behaviors. You are complying with the regulation. You are not following any shortcuts, because in the end, the project that you are seeing over here, one rain event, one high tide from the coast, one cabin in this land, one break of this bridge, anything that could go wrong over here would have an impact on your career and would have an impact on the project, would have an impact on the client, would have an impact on the society overall. So you need to be very conscious that as civil engineers particularly, you follow the regulations, you follow ethical behaviors, you comply. Shortcuts would not work for you in the industry. Bribes will not work you in the industry. You can win the projects through that while following some unethical behaviors, but that is not going to take you long in the industry. This is my 2 cents. You guys, there is no shortcut in civil industry at least, just because of the nature of the project that we do and the sort of development that happens on the basis of the design that you do or the technical advice that you provide. That is why in the beginning of the presentation, I was very clear that whatever I am covering, I'm covering based on my limited knowledge. You should not take anything for granted. You should consult with others. You should follow the process to make a decision rather than deciding on your own. Very important. So, with all of that, the last point that's very important is to have a mindset for change. The industry expects you to be ready for change because it's a dynamic industry. There are a lot of expectations that the government has from civil industries, that the client has, the society has, and we need to be ready to tackle those challenges by having a mindset to change, to adapt to the new ways of working and to contribute in the best way possible. All right, let's move on to the next one is the emergence of new fields. It's continuing from the last one, but it's quite more focused. So I talked about electronic engineering, how that is civil engineering, the IT, the computer engineering, the environmental engineering. All of those aspects come together in form of digital twin. Digital twin is nothing but a mimic or replica of your infrastructure, of your asset, of your city, of any of the um, physical entity. You reflect the same in the digital world, in computers or on servers. And then, so for example, in here, um, if we talk about digital twins, then looking about, we will be looking through um, how we could have sensors on these pipes that they are laying over here, so that if the pipe starts to fill up, how they could actually manage some of the other pipe connections in a dynamic manner using the sensor data in real time in a hydraulic model, in a model as part of digital twin to make decision. This is where our industry is headed. It's not about construction, it's not just about ad hoc maintenance, it's about efficiency, it's about value. You can add efficiency and value only if you are able to deal with things in real time, only if you are able to make better decisions. And that is where digital twin comes in. This is something that is probably not happening pretty actively in India. However, we can see some aspects of this being covered in smart cities, where they use sensors, where they use real-time data collection, not just from water part, but also from transportation. I mean, how you can actually manage the traffic by coding the traffic lights in such a way that it allows traffic to move further, how it actually reduces the congestion. Uh, the digital twin would also be there. For example, if you have a big commercial building and you want to make sure that if there are any structural cracks or any issues that might crop up, then you want to know it well in advance so that you can plan the maintenance properly and in advance so that the problem doesn't become big. So the digital twin comes in into everything that we are doing into civil engineering right now, be it from transportation to geotechnical to water resources to structural to ocean to remote sensing, construction technology and management. It's just something that you need to think outside the box to use the technology to develop digital twins, the digital mimics or replicas of the infrastructure to add value for the client. This is the field which will be there uh, when you graduate. This is the field which will be growing. This field is then connected to the construction technology where you use 3D models in AutoCAD Civil 3D or any other tool to plan out your construction properly. When you are actually constructing all of these houses, how will you ensure that all of this look exactly the same? How you manage the construction, how you supervise it, how you plan it out so that it gets constructed in a reduced amount of time. That is where 3D models and technologies uh, and use of that for construction sequencing and accuracy and efficiency that comes in picture. It's still a growing technology. There is a lot more that is happening and it will happen in future. So you guys should watch out for and be up to speed. The same thing is with the net zero, with United Nations giving challenging targets to all the stakeholders, all the countries. It's very important that we understand what carbon footprint is. We understand what are the actions of our I mean, what are the what are the footprint of our design or infrastructure, and then how we can actually reduce that, how we can move towards net zero or even further negative carbon footprint where you're actually saving the carbon. There's a lot more that I can talk about it, but I just want to touch upon. And if you have any questions in the last 20 minutes, I can take up those questions with regards to any of those emerging fields. Integrated delivery approach, we have talked about it a lot, how that actually helps the projects, big data processing for effective and efficient decision making, connecting with the digital twins, and also the computer IT and electrical technologies. So that's something that we talked about earlier. We talked about digital tools in the construction industry. In 3D model, you can connect that 3D model to virtual reality and artificial intelligence to have a more robust construction sequencing plan and add value on the project. You can then connect this to artificial intelligence and machine learning to operate efficiently, to decide at the right time so that you can manage and maintain a system better. And again, all this is being done by civil engineers, you and me. And that can only happen when we are thinking outside the box, when we are the change in the industry. Then only we would be in the game. And, and that is where I want to just reflect upon all of that. When I talked about my seminar in the third year during the presentation, how that actually helped me understand where I want to be, then I decided that I want to pursue my master's if I want to be established in the field. I want to focus on the professional development, be part of professional bodies. I was part of ASC, Engineering Without Borders in my master's. In bachelor's, I published two journal papers just because I knew that how that would help me understand the theory and practical aspects and industry relation to industries better and connect me with my peers and for me to be stay in the game, to be staying in the game. It also helped me to go the extra mile and to ask for things which were not specified in the curriculum. You need to be doing more if you want to learn more. That's very basic. If you do more, you learn more. But you need to be very, very clear that you are not afraid on asking for something that you don't understand. You are not afraid of dealing with a challenge or proposing a solution that might or might not work. It is about having that fearless attitude that I tried to have in some part of my career. I also focused on changing myself wherever there was a need. And while doing all of that, I knew that I can only learn from others, from my peers, from my superiors if I am humble. If I am not afraid of making mistakes. I have made numerous mistakes, I am making numerous mistakes, but that's with the focus on learning from mistakes. Even now, when I manage a team of 20 plus members who all are doing hydraulics, designing the projects for 13 or 14 different countries, all the infrastructure projects, we are dealing with different regulations for different countries, liaising with different nationality of people, understanding their expectations. All of that we are able to do because we are not afraid of taking challenges. We are focused on professional development, so that even if we do some mistakes, we correct it through the processes and through collaboration and teamwork. And then in the end, we feel satisfied that whatever we are doing, it's being used for society. Society is getting benefited from it, and we are doing it the right way, the ethical way. This is my journey, which I covered early on. My advice to you is again the same thing with regards to focusing on technical excellence, professional development through professional societies when you are graduated from the college. But when you are in the college, then focus on the professional development through your coursework, laboratory work, asking for more to do, asking your professor to give you more projects so that you understand, and that will keep you ready for core industry. This is a particular thing that I discussed and touched upon. Uh, you can read more about digital twins, big data, AI, ML, VR online, and there are a lot of courses. But those are all the things that we are using in industry right now. So be up to speed on that. That's very important. You need to focus on both the details and big picture so that you are excelling technically, you are being an expert, but at the same time, you are understanding that the collaboration is the key of a successful project. Collaboration is the key to add value for your clients. Compliance I covered, collaboration I covered. This is something that I covered as well. I, uh, I advise you all about change, and uh, in the end, if I would have to give you just one advice, it is to follow your heart and know what your strengths are and know what you need to do to get better. And that is it from my side. I'll put myself on mute if there are any questions.
For all of those who might have any queries for Sir, I would request you to kindly put your questions in the chat box or you can directly unmute and ask. So there's this one query from a student that I received about
Sure.
how these maps and projects actually started. I mean, we've seen a lot of images of the maps of the Bahrain project in your presentation. So how does that actually, get started? How do you make these maps and then how does it get translated into reality? So if you could please touch upon that a little.
Yep. So just like her question, this is also a quite good question. And one simple answer is clients want to make money. There are investors who are always looking for ways to multiply their wealth. It's one basic thing that projects are conceived more often than not is as a result of somebody wants to invest in an idea, in a project that would give them rewards, that would give them a profit on over and above what they're investing. This project that you are seeing over here, that uh, was probably conceived because an investor in that area who had the money wanted to invest, and this is something which was, if you look at 2005 and somebody tells you in 90s or 2000s that you can just fill in the land, you can build up everything, and then you can sell it and you can earn money. uh, Investors see that opportunity, they see that what the benefits are lying, and that's how projects get triggered. It is often I mean it is often started by people like you and me who think that we can actually build an island on South Bombay side so that we would have additional land available, and then this would help the industries in South Bombay grow a lot more. If you build, reclaim this land, then there will be people who would be willing to buy this land so that they have a great view of sea. They have access to the South Bombay side, and then you'll make income. But then it boils down to who wants to invest that. I mean, we can have a lot of ideas on the projects, but it is about finding the right investor, finding the investor who sees value in that. And that is possible when you gain experience in the technical industry and you learn how to sell your project. You learn how to market it in a way that you show the outcome, you show the big picture, and you also go into detail to show that this big picture would actually work. That comes with experience. And so in two lines, how it probably started is a collaboration between the right technical person who had the big picture in detail about it so that the project would work, what the cost and benefit would be. And then there was an investor or a set of investors who listened to that particular person or a company, group of people, and saw value in that so that there were return in that investment. That's how things start. That's how projects start. If you see the Bandra Worli Sea Link, how that started, that's probably an idea that was floating around for quite some time. But then there was funding available, there were investors, and then they actually saw that through Bandra Worli Sea Link, they can actually get the return. Now, you see the toll that we pay on when we cross through Bandra Worli Sea Link. There was an analysis that I'm sure showed that the return from that toll are more than the investment, and whoever invest in that would earn profit, and that's how the project got implemented. I mean, there are 10 other ideas you can connect from here to here. There is one that's going on right now is to have a tunnel from Borivali to I think Jogeshwari or Andheri. All of this way, all throughout the way, there is a tunnel through which they will create another highway underground. And there is somebody who, or a group of people who actually see that there is value in that. People would actually go through that route and they would be able to collect the toll, and it will have benefits, it will return the profit. And that's how projects start. um, but your role and my role is crucial in saying that the project would work or not. And that comes through experience, that comes from exposure. When you join a core industry, first 3 to 5 years you should just focus on learning. You should not focus on your salary or anything else. You should focus on learning, slogging through your day, and then sometimes night as well, so that you get better, you excel, you interact with whoever the experts are, try to learn from them, ask for projects, ask for opportunities, and that is how you will grow in civil core industry. That is how projects are conceived. Once they are conceived through your technical uh, consultancy, then it's about marketing and investors to take it forward.
Thank
Okay,
you so much for that answer, sir. There's
no
just
problem.
one more question in the chat box about how is freelancing in the field of civil engineering a good career option, and what are the various aspects of freelancing in this particular field? I'm sorry, sir, you're currently muted, so if you could please
Yes,
unmute
thank you.
yourself.
Thank you. So what I was saying that the freelancing in civil core or civil engineering, you should look into it after 3 to 5 years of being in the industry, learning your way through it, and then only you can understand the opportunities, you can understand challenges a bit better to decide on freelancing. How many of you have heard about Force Structural Engineers? This is a startup that people from the masters structural people, structural graduates, dual degree, structural aspiration they started, and they were in the industry in Gammon and other structural industries for some 3 5 years, and then only they started their own freelancing or their own company, because you need to be in the field, you need to be in the industry as a doer for at least 3 to 5 years before you can get into the freelancing and make it as a career. Now, growth of civil R&D in India in next 10 years. Um, we should not look about next 10 years. We should just look about right now, right here. The smart city work that's happening. That's using the digital twin aspect. That's using the 3D models. That's using the integrated delivery aspects. Um, so it's already happening. But then, as I said during the presentation, R&D only works if you are able to sell it. It only works when you are able to market the benefits of that. And if you are developing a technology through that R&D, you need to be able to show the profit over and above the investment. Uh, so be it in India or anywhere else, the civil R&D would work if you are able to go back to basics and show the economics of it, what's the return of the investment, and then you're able to earn money through civil R&D. I'm just answering questions, but if there's any follow-up question from Kirtesh, then he can ask, or if somebody else wants to add to it, because as I said in the beginning, I should consider myself, and I do have only limited knowledge. So there are things that you can share as well.
Please feel free to ask any queries that you may have.
Sir, this is Tanmay from BTech final year.
Hi, Tanmay, go ahead.
So, sir, I am in the placement team of IIT Bombay. I wanted to ask, is there a specific reason why Morton McDonald do not come to IIT Bombay for placements?
We do not go to uh, 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 many universities because we prefer to interact with candidates through our recruitment portal, and it is something that depends from year to year. But there is no particular reason for not coming to IIT Bombay. It's just that we have recruited people from IIT Bombay. I mean, one of the first person that I recruited in my team in notes was a PhD from IIT Bombay from 2016. Um, so we do recruit, but we do direct recruitment who apply to our requisitions.
Sir, can you elaborate a little more on the recruitment process so that students are aware? Because I don't think many people know about the recruitment
Yes.
process of Morton
Yeah.
McDonald.
So as I said in the beginning that I am not representing Mott McDonald when I am actually giving this presentation. However, I can explain in general about the recruitment process that I have seen in various companies that I was part of. Is two ways. One, if you are keen on opting a particular core field, you get in touch with the person who's managing the team and people who are part of the team in a particular company, and you send your CV to them. You connect with them through LinkedIn, and you express your interest. You show what you list out what you have done and what you can bring on board and why you are excited about being part of the company, being part of that particular team, being part of that particular core area. And then from there on, even if there is no opportunity, they can connect you to the HR. This is one approach. It's the same thing that if you need to apply for an internship abroad in a university, you review the profiles of the professors, then you review what they are doing, and then you see if that matches your interest or what you want to do, and then you send them the email, then the communication starts, and then LinkedIn offers a good platform to connect as well. However, there is another way that is their industry is to apply to their recruitment portal, where they have certain requisitions for graduates out, and you apply to those requisitions, submit your CV and additional details through the recruitment platform. All of the civil core companies that I know of in India, including Adar and others, they do have recruitment portal where you can see the opportunities and you can apply. Third option is that you said, in the beginning, is with regards to companies coming for campus placement. But I would highly advise for you to connect with people from core industries if you really want to join core industries in India. Particularly at this point of time where there might not be many who might be coming to placement this year from core side. Uh, and then explain what you have done, why you want to join, and then they can connect you to the placement team, and they can in fact keep your CV as well if any opportunity comes in. Also look at the website, the recruitment portal for various companies. If something comes up, put the alerts on so that you get the alerts if they post a new requisition. Um, uh, for me, when I joined DAR for a brief stint of few months after my bachelor's, when DAR came into IIT Bombay, I was not uh, uh, listed in the water resources category. When I got in, when I went to the interview, I told them that I am actually interested in the water resources field. This is what I have done in my past 4 years or 3.5 years in IIT Bombay, and what I would bring on board if I am hired as a water resource engineer. There was no opening over there at that time, so the company went back. After a month or so, they had an opportunity within the team for water resource engineer, because projects come in that trigger the recruitment, and not all the recruitment happens through campus placements, particularly in the core field. So then they contacted me, and then because they already had my CV, so they knew what I'm bringing on board, what my experience is, what I have done in IIT Bombay and through internships, and it was a recruitment or the job that I received directly. So as I said in the and in the presentation, that if you if you uh, if you ask questions, then only you might get more opportunities. So you should always be finding ways to deal with the situation. The market might be challenging, but if we are able to think outside the box to find opportunities, opportunities will be there both in core and non-core. Tanmay, did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just have a follow-up question to that.
Go ahead.
So there's an underlying concern among the students that in off-campus recruitments or direct recruitments, as you mentioned, most of the freshers miss out to experienced industry professionals, because since it's direct recruitments, the companies prefer hiring people who are more experienced. So can you allude to that a little?
Yes, so that's a valid concern. I have been there when I graduated with bachelor's, and even in there, my recruitment was direct from DAR. I preferred to have it through the placement process, uh, and have the offer letter through the placement body. So that is the right way to do, at least when we are graduating with bachelor's. When we are graduating with a PhD, or with a master's, with a particular specialization, we might have some previous industry experience, or our PhD might have given us exposure to particular specialization or field, and that is where you can actually contact directly and do that. But I would advise Tanmay and everybody else as well to follow the process that the recruitment body specifies, and you can still be honest with the interviewer and say what you want to do. Even if there's a core company which is not offering a particular role, you can tell them that you want to do a particular role, and that is about the honesty, and then they can actually consider that, and some opportunities might come up, like what happened with Dell. For masters, and there is nobody from masters and PhD on this call, right? So I'll take it as a no. So for bachelors, do follow the placement process that is laid out. For masters and PhD, you guys can contact directly, and because you would be dealing with the process that a particular company has, and the company has their reputation as well. They would be honoring what if they're following up with. Um, there are instances where we actually contact the placement bodies, but then we tell them to send the CVs through to us, and then once we review the CV, then we would ask the candidates to come to our of one of our office locations for the interview if they are shortlisted after a telephonic interview. So that is something where there's a middle ground, that placement board is involved, as well as we get to interact with the candidate uh, outside the outside the campus. Um, uh, we have recruited over 40 or so people in my past 4 years in McDonald's for hydraulics expertise, and almost all of them, uh, actually all of them were actually masters or more, just because of the nature of that work that we do, where we need a specialization. So there would be instances where the recruitment person, or when you contact somebody on LinkedIn, they'll just say that we are not looking for bachelors, and then that might be up to you to explain what your interests are. Summarize that, Tanmay, as a bachelor's, as a BTech student, or as a dual degree student, I would advise you guys to follow the process outlined by placement body, and that should work out.
So there's one more question in the chat box by
Um,
Priyanka.
yes, what was your reason for doing your PhD instead of continuing industry? Um, so I did my master's uh, immediately after I graduated, but in the period of 3 or 4 months, I was in DAR, getting industry exposure. In the third year, at the end of the third year, I knew that I want to be in the core industry, and I want to be somewhere in hydraulics or water resources, because I really like that particular area, and I was enjoying that I am able to relate theory to practical. I'm able to visualize the flows, and relate to theory, and that was quite good. I also did an internship in DHI in Delhi, Noida, which also gave me more industry exposure. I did an internship in Vision Earth Care as well at the end of my second year, which helped me understand various water technologies. This is a an incubated startup from Professor Shankar from Chemical Engineering for soil biotechnology. So all of that gave me reassurance that I do want to continue on that, and that's why at the end of third year I gave my GRE and TOEFL, and applied to the universities, got selected, got full scholarship, went to UC, but the trigger was between second and third year, and one thing after other gave me reassurance that I do want to continue in that. And then I saw that when I did the internships, and when I got exposed to some of the industry projects, I saw that being just a bachelor would not help me become an expert. I do have to do masters at some point of time. And so I decided to do it immediately after I graduate. Um, the same thing was clear to me when I was there in Dar for a few months. I knew that I need to do my masters to gain more depth and breadth of knowledge in motor resources to continue to be in that field till I retire. So that is my reason. I know it's a bit long, Priyanka, but everybody needs to find what they like, and that is where what Vivista shared the link. If you go through this particular test, to definitely make you more self-aware.
Any more questions from the audience?
Mhm.
So it seems like there are no more questions from the audience presently. So I think we should wrap up the session now.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions afterwards as well, they can get in touch with me through LinkedIn, or they can email me on this email ID. Again, I want to reiterate that whatever I presented is publicly available, and there is nothing that I used from as a data or information which is confidential. And I'm not representing Mott MacDonald on this in this presentation. I'm giving this presentation as one of the alumnus of IIT Bombay. Thank you everybody for joining in, and hope this helps, and good luck for your your studies in IIT Bombay, and hopefully you get to do what you like to do, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, sir. We thank you so much to take time out and for interacting with the students and for giving such a wonderful insights into the civil core industry. I would also like to thank everyone present in the audience for joining us.